Hello everyone. Welcome to this lecture on dynamic charges. The topics which are there in this lecture, they cover some topics. There's an overlap between some topics in module 4 and some topics from module 5, but since most of them are from module 5, I'll specify this as a topic from module 5 itself. So in this lecture we have three main topics. First is the concept of retarded potentials. In fact, the topic of this lecture is retarded potentials. Then in the next lecture, in a different video, I'll be discussing the Leonard-Wishart potentials. And this Leonard-Wishart potential is basically applying the concept of retarded potentials to the case of an extended charge. And eventually we use these Leonard-Wishart potentials to find out the fields, and that will include an acceleration term for moving charges. So that's the reason why we call this as lesson as dynamic charges. That is, here we'll be studying the fields due to charges which are in motion. Now, just to recap, in the previous lecture we had talked on gauge invariance. When we have the Lorentz gauge, the inhomogeneous potential equations, they become like this. The box square operator, I hope you remember the box square operator. It's basically something like a four-dimensional Laplacian. Okay, so we have the regular Laplacian and then minus 1 by c square, dou square by dou t square. So that is going to be your box square operator. So when a box square operator operates on the scalar potential, we get minus rho by epsilon naught. And same box square potential, when it applies on the vector potential, we have minus mu naught into j. So in the static case, of course, this box square operator just reduces to the Laplacian operator, and we'll get these two equations like this. And these equations, they have the most general solutions to be something like this. Okay, so now in the most non-static case, okay, that is the most general case, that is a non-static case. It is not the rho, the charge distribution at the present time that matters. That means, what is the charge distribution right now? It's not that what matters. What matters is the charge distribution which was at an earlier time. So that is going to determine the two potentials at any certain point. So for instance, let's say I have some charge distribution over here, and I want to find out the potentials at this point. Okay, so we have some reference point. This point, the position of this point is r, and we take a small volume element over here, and then that is at a position r prime. So in the static case, what do? We just find out, we integrate over the entire volume, and then that is going to give us the potential at this particular point, right? Either phi or a. But in the dynamic case, where the charges are moving, in that case what will happen is, if I measure a potential at a particular point of time, I'll also have to take into account that the information takes a finite amount of time to flow. So for instance, let's say at a certain point of time the charge was here, and as I'm measuring its potential, then the next instant, let's say the charge moves and reaches this point. That motion, that information that the charge has moved, that information is not conveyed instantaneously to this point, because nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. So that information that the charge has moved, it is not get conveyed at this point instantaneously. Rather, it's going to take us finite amount of time for that information to arrive here. That finite amount of time, because the speed of light is finite. So because it takes finite amount of light for the change, the information regarding the change in the position of the charges to reach this point. So for that reason, what happens is, we don't consider the charge distribution at the present time. We need to consider the charge distribution at an earlier time. Okay, so right now let's say the charge here, and if I measure the potential here, there is going to be an incorrect potential, because the information took a finite amount of finite amount of time to reach this point. So I do not consider the potential at the present time, rather I consider the potential at an earlier time. Okay, so that's why it's called as a retarded time. So the retarded time is given as TR, which is defined as T minus R by C. So what is capital R? Capital R is simply R minus R prime. So in other words, capital R is the displacement between the source and the field point. So because the information, light travels at a speed c, the time that it takes for light to travel from this point to this point will be r by c. The present time is t, so the earlier time that I need to consider would be t minus r by c. Okay, so that's the definition of the retarded time. So tr, retarded time, is t minus r by c. So over here, of course, r is r minus r prime. So in that case, the generalized retarded potentials, they become like this. So remember, this was a generalized solution of the inhomogeneous equation. So you have phi and a here, and inside the integrand we just had written rho of r prime and j of r prime. But now rho is no longer dependent only on r prime, it will also depend on tr, because tr is the retarded time. So this is just a suggestion that we make here, that rho depends on r prime and tr. But is it really correct? Are we really correct in making this kind of a suggestion here? So what is the touchstone that is going to help us to determine whether our choice of rho, this particular choice of the form of rho and a, are they correct or wrong? The only way to verify this is if these definitions, redefinitions of rho and a, do they satisfy the inhomogeneous potential equations or not? Okay, so by defining rho and a this way, do they still satisfy this inhomogeneous potential equations or not? If they satisfy, then we are on the right track. Okay, so that's what we are trying to do here. So how do we proceed here? Very simple. All we need to do is we need to check whether this potential and this scalar potential and this vector potential, do they satisfy this equation number 1. Now if you look at equation number 1, what do we have? Equation number 1, we have a box square operator, and for getting the box square operator, the starting point is the Laplacian. So we need to find out the Laplacian of phi from these redefinitions of phi and a. Okay, so how do you find out Laplacian? I have a scalar field. One way, I mean, the Laplacian is basically defined as the divergence of the gradient of a scalar field. So first what we have to do is we have to take the divergence of this one, then we have to take the, first we have to take the gradient of this potential phi, and then we have to take the divergence of that gradient of phi. That is going to give us the Laplacian. So now if you are trying to find out the gradient, you are applying the gradient on this side, then you have to apply the gradient on this side as well, gradient with respect to the potential to the position r. So now if we try to apply the gradient on this r, now we'll have to see in the static case what would we have done. Gradient acting on rho, I mean, we would have straight away said that this rho is independent of on r, it depends only on r prime, so the gradient with respect to r would have given us 0. But now we can no longer say that, because rho is not only dependent on r prime, it is also dependent on tr. And what does tr depend? So it is explicitly dependent on r prime and tr. And now this tr, what does tr depend on? Tr depends on t minus r by c. And what is r depend on? R is r minus r prime. So tr depends on r as well as r prime. So if tr depends on r as well as r prime, this means this rho and j, they will also depend. Explicitly it will depend on r prime, but through tr it will also depend on r. Okay, so if that is the case, then when we take the gradient, then the gradient is going to operate on this rho as well. So to make things simple, we'll just arrive at certain results first beforehand. So first, what is the time derivative of rho? That is very straightforward. Dou rho by dou tr is simply equal to dou rho by dou t, because tr is equal to t minus r by c, so differential of tr will be equal to the differential of t. So dou rho by dou tr is equal to dou rho by dou t, which simply write it as rho dot. Then what about the gradient of rho? Okay, so now gradient of rho depends on r prime, rho also depends on tr. We are trying to find out the gradient with respect to r. Remember, we are just writing it as nabla, right? This is a nabla operator. There is no prime here. That means I'm not finding the gradient with respect to r prime. I'm finding the gradient with respect to r. Okay, so when I take the gradient of rho with respect to r, now what will happen is rho, it implicitly depends on r. So when you try to take the gradient, we have to apply the chain rule. So when you apply the chain rule, what you do, you differentiate rho with respect to tr because it explicitly depends on tr, and then you differentiate tr with respect to r, that is you take the gradient of tr. Now dou rho by dou tr, okay, is equal to rho dot, and what is this gradient of tr? Gradient of tr will be simply minus 1 by c into gradient of modulus r, capital R. So rho dot gradient of tr, which is equal to gradient of r by c, that 1 by c will come outside with a minus sign here because tr is equal to t minus r by c. So minus 1 by c rho dot into gradient of r. So that is going to be your gradient of rho. Okay, so this equation here, you take the gradient on the side, so you have to take the gradient here, and when I try to take the gradient here, I find that inside the integrand we have a product of rho and r. Okay, we have a product of two scalar fields. So when you try to take the gradient of a product of two scalar fields, so essentially what you'll be doing is we'll have to use the product rule. So product rule means first you have to apply the gradient on the rho, then you have to apply the gradient on 1 by r. So that's what we do here. We first apply the gradient on rho, leaving 1 by r as it is. Then we leave rho as it is and we apply the gradient on 1 by r. So this gradient of rho, okay, we have already shown this gradient of rho is minus 1 by c rho dot gradient r. So you just substitute this here. Then gradient of okay, of course, gradient of r. Okay, so here this gradient of r is r by position vector r divided by the distance to that distance or the magnitude of that particular position vector, and gradient of 1 by r is simply minus r by r cube or r cap by r square. These are two very popular results from the first chapter of Griffiths, so you can just go through that part on vector calculus and you will be able to see that these two results are indeed correct. So now all you have to do is just plug them back in. So gradient of r, we have r by r, so that will give us vector r divided by r square, and gradient of 1 by r is vector r divided minus vector r by r cube. You substitute back here and this will give us gradient of phi is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught integration over tau prime minus rho dot by c. Then substitute for this gradient of r, we have r by r square and minus rho into gradient of 1 by r, that is going to give us r by r cube. We call this equation number 5. Now next step, we have to take the divergence because ultimately we are interested in the Laplacian of this phi. So you take the divergence of this equation number 5. Moment you take the divergence of this equation 5, so you have to take the divergence of this quantity and you have to take the divergence of this quantity. Okay, so we have to take the divergence of this as well as the divergence of this, divergence of rho dot r by r square and divergence of rho into r by r cube. Now when I take the divergence of this one, again it's a this quantity inside the bracket, it is a product of a scalar field and a vector field. So whenever we have a product of scalar and vector field and you're taking the divergence, then there is another product rule for the divergence which is again given in the first chapter of Griffiths. You can refer to that. So what this, when you expand this, what you have to first do, you have to first take the gradient of the scalar field, grad of rho dot, and leaving the vector field as it is. Then leaving the scalar field as it is, you have to take the divergence of the vector field. So this r by r square dotted with the gradient of rho dot, and the other term will be equal to rho dot into the divergence of r by r square, and this minus 1 by c remains outside. In the same way here also, so we first take the gradient of rho. Okay, we take the gradient of rho, leaving r by r cube as it is, then leaving rho as it is, we take the divergence of r by r cube. Okay, so this integral will be the expansion of this term and this integral is the expansion of this term. So that is your Laplacian of phi. So now we need to evaluate, because we already know what is gradient of rho. We have already determined this, but here we find that there is a not only gradient of rho, there is also a gradient of rho dot. So we can proceed in a similar way as before, and we can show that the gradient of rho dot will turn out to be equal to minus rho double dot by c into r by vector r by r. Okay, it can be shown. Okay, so I'll leave this to you as an assignment. You can try this out and obtain this particular result. So again, I'll borrow two results from chapter 1 in Griffiths, that is this expansion, divergence of r by r square. You'll find that it is equal to 1 by r square, and divergence of r by r cube will be 4 pi into the Dirac delta function, the three-dimensional Dirac delta function. Okay, so we have all these tools in hand. We have gradient of rho, we have gradient of rho dot, we have divergence of r by r square, and we have divergence of r by r cube, of course, where r here r is equal to r minus r prime, and we have equation number 6. So it is just a matter of plugging all of these over here. Okay, so what we do is we have this gradient of rho dot. Okay, so gradient of rho dot is this. Gradient of rho dot is minus rho double dot by c into r by vector r by r. So we just plug this into this and we get this one. Then divergence of r by r square, divergence of r by r square is 1 by r square. So we just have rho dot by r square. So this quantity inside the bracket will turn out to be this one. In a similar way, we have gradient of rho, which is equal to minus 1 by c rho dot by rho dot into gradient r, and gradient r is equal to r by r. So we just substitute here, and then we have divergence of r by r cube, which is equal to 4 by into the Dirac delta function evaluated at r minus r prime. Okay, so this is what we get, and this is equation number 6, which is modified using these 4 results. Okay, so just a matter of simplifying them now. So we have r, so we have 1 by r square here and 1 by r here, and we have a minus sign here. So this is going to give us minus rho double dot by c, and we have r dot r. R dot r is going to give us r square. So rho double dot by c. Then we have r square. R dot r is r square, and r square into r, we will get a r cube. Then of course we multiply this 1 by c here, so minus and minus will get a plus here, so 1 by c square. Again minus 1 by c goes over here, so we will have minus rho dot by c, 1 by r square over here. Then this expression, so we have again r dot r, which will give us a r square, and then in the denominator we'll have a r cube into r, we'll have a r to the power 4. So minus and minus will give us a plus, rho dot by c, r square by r to the power 4. And finally we have 4 pi the rho 4 pi rho times the Dirac delta function at r minus r prime, and of course 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught outside, and the entire thing is integrated over this volume tau prime. Now this it just cancels out, so this r square goes off. We'll have a 1 here, and in the denominator we'll have 1 by r. Okay, so we have similarly we have 1 by r square here, and this r square will vanish, and we'll have in the denominator we'll have r square. So now minus rho dot by c into 1 by r square plus rho dot by c into 1 by r square, these two will get cancelled, and eventually we'll just have these two terms left. Okay, so these are the two terms which are left. Now these are easy to evaluate. Okay, so what, considering the first term, okay, so what do we have here? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, there is a 1 by c square. Then inside the integrand we have a second derivative with respect to time. Okay, and we have integration with respect to r prime. So now time and r prime, they are independent, so I could as well take the time derivative outside, so it will become a dou square by dou t square. 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, I take it inside, integration of rho r prime d tau prime r minus r prime. And what about this one, the second integral, what will happen? So this is very straightforward, because we have rho, which is a function of, explicitly it's a function of r prime, and this is multiplied with the Dirac delta function. The Dirac delta function, it performs the sampling of any function that you multiply it with, and then integrate over a volume which contains that point at which it is being sampled. So this is going to give me simply the value of rho at which is calculated at r. That's what this is going to give us. And this, of course, this 4 pi and this 4 pi will get cancelled, and only 1 by epsilon naught is going to remain. So we have this minus sign, 1 by epsilon naught rho at evaluated at r. Okay, so now this we can easily identify. This is nothing but the scalar potential. This is nothing but your phi. So this is going to give us 1 by c square dou square phi by dou t square minus rho by epsilon naught. So this is the Laplacian of phi. Now this Laplacian of phi, I take this 1 by c square dou square phi by dou t square, I take it on the left hand side, and it is going to give me this. I collect this Laplacian and 1 by c square dou square by dou t square, I collect them together, and this is nothing but the box square operators. So box square phi is equal to minus rho by epsilon naught. We can proceed in a similar manner and do the same for each and every component of the vector potential. So I leave it to you as an exercise, and we can show that this expression, it is also valid for each and every component of A, that is for AX, for AY and AZ. For all of them it is valid, so you can combine them together. That will give us box square A is equal to minus mu naught J. So this shows that our definition of the retarded potentials, okay, they lead us to the inhomogeneous potential equation, because these are nothing but the inhomogeneous potential equations. So we can say that the retarded potentials that we were talking about here, they represent solutions for the non-static scenario. So this is basically is the idea of retarded potentials. So I'm going to stop the lecture here. This idea of retarded potential just tells you what we need to consider when we want to find out the potential at a particular point. Now we have to apply this to the case where I consider a point charge, and that point charge is moving along a certain trajectory, and that trajectory has a certain equation, can be defined by a certain equation. Then a point charge becomes something like an extended charge. Okay, so in that case we can find out the exact value of the potentials, the exact forms of the potentials, and that is known as a Liénard-Wiechert potentials. So we will discuss that in the next lecture. So thank you. Maybe after we finish this particular lesson, we'll have some assignments on this particular topic. So thank you.